Hello everybody. So in today's video, I want to talk about the madness of yesterday with the Bitcoin proxies selling off as a whole, and I call this proxy madness. And I want to particularly focus on two proxies. I own both of these. Of course, Mara is a much smaller position for me than MicroStrategy, obviously, but Mara is nonetheless worth talking about because it is now trading below the value of the Bitcoin. And so I'll talk about Mara towards the end of the video. Let me begin with the day of yesterday and MicroStrategy. Specifically, MicroStrategy, I don't even know, is it down 6% or 7%? Doesn't really matter to me, the day-to-day price movements. I really don't care. I care about the long run, and today, the market yesterday had a freak out. It made absolutely no sense. We were cozy. You know, I wake up and then I see, boom, Bitcoin crashing because of, I don't even know if it was a tweet, but because of Trump saying, oh, with the EU, I don't want to negotiate anymore. I want to do a 50% tariff. People have not learned that with Trump, you got to focus on the actions. The actions have been, okay, he's serious about putting a tariff for a week or two. He did that for a week or two. He's okay with doing that for a week or two. This is just talk. This is just fluff. Okay, he's saying 50% tariff on the EU. Well, you know what? Yesterday, my family's in town. Yesterday, we had some Washington State wine. There's really good wine in the U.S. The U.S. is going to be okay, right? It's like we don't need to import it. Anyways, it's a tangent. I'm going to refocus. We don't really care. Like it's like whatever. If there's tariffs for 50% of the EU, they're going to last a week. They're going to last 2 weeks, and then there will be no tariffs anymore again. At least that's my take. You know, maybe I'm entirely wrong, but the guy, Trump, he talks. That's what he does. Yet the market reacts to speech and not to concrete acts. The market should react to concrete things. And this is where this makes me entirely mad, because something very concrete happened to gold. Alchemy happened. Right? They did it on a few atoms in a very small piece, but they did it at CERN. They were able to turn lead into gold. This is a 300 years timeline type of event. This is crazy news. You know, study what happened to the market of diamonds as soon as, I think it's very popular in Surat in India, as soon as they were able to foster these techniques and create create real diamonds out of seeds, out of diamond seeds. And they've entirely disrupted the diamond space to the point that the perfect diamonds now are like the fake diamonds, or the human-made diamonds. Took what, 15 years, 10 to 15 years? Diamonds are entirely disrupted. So think about what could happen to gold if they could make it in mass quantities. The very fact that they were able to turn a few atoms of lead into gold is a game-changing fact, because you know what? You can probably ramp that much more easily than plans to go mine gold on an asteroid, right? Which some people talk about too as a long-term threat to gold. Is gold going to be a 5,000-year asset? Is it still? I mean, you know, the Lindy effect applies until it does not, and this is the type of event to which I think gold would have reacted. But this is very concrete, very real. So gold is up. This is fluff. This is talk. This hasn't happened. This is a negotiation tactic, as we know over and over again. If it happens, it's probably going to be for a few weeks, and then the EU will fold. So, and this makes the markets move. I mean, this is unbelievable. TradFi is completely and utterly irrational. Very material news makes the asset go up, and that's very material negative news. And then fluff makes the world's most pristine asset go down. And Selloff said, rightfully so, he said no tariff on Bitcoin. He's entirely right. But the truth is, I don't think there's going to be much tariff anywhere, because, again, this is talk. Talk versus actions. Judge people on actions. That's just my take. Anyways, moving on. Let's talk about the treasuries, the Bitcoin treasuries. Of course, I follow them. Everybody follows them. There's websites that follow them. Anyways, these are my calculation. You know, I do it. I don't do exactly mNAV. I do my own version. I do market cap to Bitcoin NAV. That's why I call it price to NAV. But it's essentially the same as mNAV. And it's 0.99x for Mara, 1.66x for MicroStrategy. When you calculate, when you do these calculations, when you keep the same across periods, that's what matters. Keep the same calculation across period, and then you can say, oh, is it cheaper now than it ever was or that it has been before? And I can tell you that MicroStrategy is now getting back into as cheap as it ever got on my spreadsheet. The cheapest I ever saw it on my spreadsheet was 1.45, and that was during the valley of despair of, once again, the fluff, the no, it wasn't going to happen, the fall was falling apart. You were remembering this. That was 2 months ago now, right? Liberation Day, April 2nd, right? And what happened? Nothing. We're back to normal. We're back in limbo. We have 90 days. But anyways, the stock dropped to 1.45 back then. But in the meantime, this is just a coiled spring getting ready to pop. This is what this is, because Selloff has been relentless in buying Bitcoin. He's bought an average of about $1 billion a week for the past few weeks. He's been relentless. And so if the stock price doesn't move, the price to NAV simply compresses, and it can't compress forever because in my view, Mara now is a prime acquisition target. Like I said, like if they could borrow money to do a buyback at Mara, that would make a lot of sense right now, wouldn't it? It would make a lot of sense to go borrow money to do a buyback right now at 0.99. So anyways, let's move on. Let's talk about MicroStrategy now. MicroStrategy is not for traders. People keep saying everywhere, oh, we want the mNAV to go up. We want the mNAV to go up. And why do you want the mNAV to go up? Are you trying to sell the company built on the most pristine asset, and you're trying to invest in fiat and get dollars, who is going to have the Moab, the mother of all prince, is coming? Because nobody wants bonds anymore, whether it is the US bonds or the Japanese bonds. Look at the rates. Nobody's buying the bonds anymore. Nobody wants bonds anymore. The Fed is doing stealth QE right now. They're buying government bonds right now. No announcement, no nothing in the news. They just started doing it. I hope we actually have good journalists at the press conference ask a question about that at the next press conference, right? I wish they had YouTubers at those press conferences. They would ask the right questions to Jay Powell. Anyways, thankfully, a lot of companies are letting influencers and people on social ask these questions these days. Hopefully that happens to the Fed one day, because you got to ask the tough question. Anyways, you want to sell an asset built on the most pristine asset when the price to NAV is at the top and buy the fiat? I have no interest in buying the fiat. I have no interest in buying the fiat. And when you do price to NAV, right, 1.66, that's a price to NAV, or whatever you want to call it. One way to look at this, and that's the way I look at it, is this is the present value of the future Bitcoin, and specifically the future Bitcoin count, because you could say that the present value of future Bitcoin is one, right? The present value of one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is going to be worth always one Bitcoin. But what's the present value of the future Bitcoin on the balance sheet? That's, in my view, a good way to look at price to NAV. And now the market is telling you the price to NAV for MicroStrategy of 1.66. What does that tell you? That tell you that the market is on MicroStrategy is only going to increase count by 66%. So MicroStrategy is only going to acquire 380,000 Bitcoin in all of the future years that it has ahead of it. The market's telling you at 1.66 that really there's going to be 66% more Bitcoins added to the balance sheet. Except there is a problem. If you think like that, this doesn't add up at all. This doesn't add up because if you think like that, you're not bullish enough, especially on the Bitcoin price. Because guess what? If the Bitcoin price doesn't move, if the Bitcoin price stays at 108K, right? Guess how much Bitcoin that means he's going to be acquired. That's why I'm saying if you think he's only going to acquire 66%, you're not bullish enough on the price of Bitcoin. So if MicroStrategy spends what they guided, the 56.6 billion, that means they are set out to acquire 524 Bitcoin, 524,000 Bitcoin. So the announcement that they did, and so this is how I get to this conclusion, right? So this is the plan, right? This is the outlook. This is how much Bitcoin they've told us they're going to buy. They're going to buy 19 billion via the equity issuance. They're going to buy 35.5 billion left via the debt issuance, and then there's another 2.1 billion for Stripe. So if you add 19 plus 13.5 plus 2.5, I add everything, that's $56.6 billion worth of buyers that are coming. At $105,000 a Bitcoin, that's 524,000 Bitcoin. So the only way that the market thinks he's only gonna acquire 380,000 Bitcoin is if the price of Bitcoin rises something like 50%. So this is either telling you we're not bullish enough on the price of Bitcoin, or this is telling us that the price of MicroStrategy is entirely undervalued, perhaps by 30% undervalued right now as the price of MicroStrategy, just looking at these ratios. And of course, people will judge the ratios however they want. What I will say on this is, look at this guy, right? Is MicroStrategy a dumb Bitcoin wrapper that trades like an ETF for a small fee, right? Does he look like he's going to stop, right? Does he look? This is a Bitcoin clock behind him. He talks about his Bitcoin clock in an early podcast. He paid like $150,000 for his Bitcoin clock. It's his most prized acquisition. He has a Bitcoin museum at his house. I heard that at podcast. Anyways, does this guy look like he's gonna be happy with $56 billion worth of Bitcoin? Do you think he's going to stop? No, he's building a Bitcoin acquisition machine. And MicroStrategy is the most extreme, Michael Saylor is the most extreme Bitcoin maxi you will find. He is a Bitcoin, extremist, is a Bitcoin maxi, right? To the point of going out of his way to confront podcasters and dismiss podcasters whenever they talk about projects which even on the surface look okay, like Solana. He'll go out of his way to say, no, don't compare Solana treasury companies to Bitcoin treasury companies. Anyways, his financial products are infiltrating the financial system. They're spreading everywhere. This is all it is. And keep in mind, a year and a half ago, none of this existed. In fact, most of these instruments are less than 6 months old. And he has a short-run plan. He's advertised that. If you follow MicroStrategy, he's advertised the plan. He's dropped enough hints about the plans that, and this is what my belief is the next step is going to be debt instruments in other countries. So I think he's going to issue debt instruments in other countries. Maybe one in Japan, maybe one in Europe, right? And if you follow other Bitcoin treasury strategies, the whole game is to try to get listed everywhere, right? The Japanese stocks are trying to be listed in the US. The US stocks are trying to be listed in Japan, right? I call for the French company, the Blockchain Group, to try to have an OTC ticker in the US so that we can buy it in the US. So the cross-listing is the next step. And I think Michael Saylor is going to do that for MicroStrategy. I think that's the next step. A lot of people are talking about the S&P 500 inclusion. I think here a lot of folks may be a little too bullish, because what are the odds that he will pass the old school committee? Sometimes I call it a geriatric committee. Maybe that's a little mean. I don't know. But, Tesla was kept out of the S&P 500 because of an old school committee who said, oh, well, yeah, they qualify for everything. They're great, but they don't have enough car models and they're a car company, right? So he still has to get past the school committee. I don't think that's a catalyst in the short run. I think the short-run catalyst is going to be adding debt instruments issued in other countries. But what about the long run? This is what we care about, the long run. I made a full video about this 2 months ago. MSTR stock. How will Saylor sustain the Bitcoin yield over the long term? 10 concrete ideas, and I walk through all of the concrete ideas in this video. The long-term opportunities to earn yield are endless. And if a random YouTuber like myself can figure it out in a random YouTube video, imagine what Saylor can figure out with 6 AI chatbots on Saturday morning. Imagine what he can come up with, right? That's his latest speech on AI that he made at the Strategy World Conference. He talks about how he spends his Saturday morning with chatbots talking about ways to earn more AI. And in this video, I outline very concrete ways you can acquire Bitcoin even if the price to NAV is gone in the future, which is the very reason why the price to NAV is likely not going to be gone, because the present value of a future Bitcoin count is always going to be higher than 1. But anyways, borrow against your Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin. He's done that in the past. You can lend the Bitcoin to nation states or too big to fail banks like a JP Morgan. Or you can even lend the Bitcoin to entrepreneurs but at medieval interest rates, like 50% interest rates. Then the risk might be warranted, right? But you can't lend your Bitcoin at the manufactured central bank yield of 5% because that's not the real yield in the real world, right? You could list your Bitcoin on L1 blockchains and earn microtransaction fees for listing wrapped Bitcoin on all sorts of blockchains. You could use the Bitcoin to mint stablecoin and create your own stablecoin backed by Bitcoin. And you could, like a USD MSTR or a USD STR Bitcoin, a form of stablecoin. You could mint liquidity tokens and list those liquidity tokens on decentralized exchanges, right? So if you mint your own stablecoin, then you can take your own Bitcoin and you can pair it with a stablecoin of your own USD STR and wrap BTC USD, and you can list that pair on a liquidity token. You can do a liquidity provider token, and then you can earn a yield on the token, right? This is yield farming. Crypto exchanges work very differently from traditional bid-ask exchanges like you would have in the stock market. You can lend your Bitcoin to hedge funds who want to short it. And you can start a venture capital fund for Bitcoin and fund Bitcoin-backed ventures by throwing in the seed money, the seed Bitcoin. And of course, these ventures would be judged by the hurdle rate, right? You would need to require a 50% average annual rate of return or something like that to even justify taking the risk. There's a lot of ways that he's gonna be able to monetize that Bitcoin beyond 2030. He's not focused on that right now. He's focused on the ATM right now because it's the simplest way to earn a yield. Occam's razors. This dictates that the simplest way is the best way, and so Saylor is very much all about these timeless principles. And this is a timeless principle. The simple solution is the best solution. Right now, the simple solution for the yield is exploiting that price to NAV, and he's doing well. But there will be many, many more ways to earn Bitcoin in the future. And so that these price to NAVs, in my view, they are heavily undervalued, heavily. And this is the transition, right? How about becoming, and this is another option, and of course, a lot of people have been discussing that lately, is should Bitcoin treasury companies become corporate raiders? So, was it the J.D. Vance company has been talking about becoming a corporate raider for companies that are trading below cash, right? ASST, ticker symbol ASST. They wanna own companies that are below cash and get the cash and buy the Bitcoin. How about a reverse corporate raid, which is now made possible because now, for the first time, I see a company trading below the value of the Bitcoin. So now, if you look at Marathon is trading below the value of its Bitcoin, right? And so if the market's got even more irrational, but you know what, the market doesn't even have to have Mara trade below the value of the Bitcoin, right? Like, right now, someone could probably get Mara with, say, a 30% acquisition premium. Typically that's what you would pay for control or something like that for a company. And you just shut it down. You can just shut it down and get the Bitcoin, right? Imagine trying to get 48,000 Bitcoin right now. Like, the buying pressure in the market would be just insane. You would drive the price of Bitcoin much more than 30% acquisition premium that you could get just by acquiring Mara. You could even be stealth about it and just acquire Mara shares, and then boom, you make the news once you reach 10%, and you're like, aha, surprise! You need to give me a board on the seat now because I own 10%. This is what happened to Twitter back in the day with Elon Musk. The point is, what if Mara is worth the value of the Bitcoin? What the hell do we do of the value of their energy access, right? And they have access to 1.7 gigawatt of energy at the time where AI demands ever more energy. So what's the value of that? Probably a lot of money, hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion, for this much access to power. What do we do with the power generation asset, 139 megawatt? That's probably $100 million right here for a wind farm that does 114 million, and they have more stuff, access to more power. And then more importantly, what's the value of the miners? Like, I know we always talk about how Mara's miners are not the most efficient. It's true, they're not the most efficient, but they've done a lot of changes, software upgrades, liquid cooling, board repair. These miners, they're active company. They are not leaving the miners not efficient. Mara's done a very good job on the fleet efficiency, dropping it from 24.7 joules per terahash to 19.3 joules per terahash, to the point that the average now is 19.3 joules per terahash. Terawatt. This has value. These Bitcoin miners are valuable. Bitcoin mining videos don't get a lot of views. I don't cover it too much. I think a lot of people have moved away from the miners, rightfully so. But miners are a lot of money, and they have more than 50 exahash of mining equipment. Mara is still one of the largest miners in the world. And if you look at the value of the miners, okay, so the average miner they own is 19.3 joules. The value of the miner is all about the efficiency of the miner, right? And you can see at 19.3 joules, you're probably at about $10 a terahash, right? $10 a terahash. They have 50 exahash. So you do 50 exahash times $10 a terahash, and there you go. You have the value of Mara. These miners still have a lot of value. Each unit of a 19 joules terahash on the spot market is $2,790. Okay, they don't have the brand new, Bitmain S21s XP that do 12 joules terahash. They don't have the brand new machines. But it's a fool's errand. It's a mistake to say that their machines are worthless. In fact, if you buy an old miner, which I'm sure Mara still has plenty of those, the S19 was for the longest time the best Bitcoin miner, as well as like the workhorse of the industry. The S19s are still worth $840, right? And they have, tens and tens of thousands of these. So it's a fool's errand to say that the miners are worthless. They are worth something. You could totally buy Mara, spin off all of their equipment, and you send it to, I don't know, a nation state who has access to power at 1 cent a kilowatt hour and is fine mining older equipment, right? There's a lot of value in there, and I'm not even going to the value of the transformers, which the transformers of Bitcoin miners don't lose value. They're transformers. They're here to stay, right? Transformers don't lose value. So actually, if you study Bitcoin mining, you know that you only have about 80% of a Bitcoin miner that depreciates to zero over, I believe, a much longer period than the depreciation schedule is usually 36 months. People usually depreciate those over 36 months, but the useful value of a miner is probably 7 to 8 years, especially as they put them into these liquid fluids that are specially designed. Anyways, point I'm trying to make, finishing the video here, is Mara trading at 0.99 times the Bitcoin balance sheet is wild. This company is now a prime acquisition target. They must be getting a lot of calls for consolidation. They're way too cheap. And in my entire analysis today, whether I talk about MicroStrategy's price to NAV being too low, or whether I talk to Mara being way too low, of course, trading below the Bitcoin value, that doesn't include where the price of Bitcoin could run. And where do we think the price of Bitcoin is headed? We are entering the Bitcoin summer. We are entering the hot part of the bull run right now. We're entering it. These companies are trading at near all-time lows. So to me, this is still the best risk asymmetry of the market. I love my MSTR. I'm never selling it. Mara, we'll see. I wouldn't have any problem selling Mara. Love MetaPlanet. Other stocks I like. I share them on the Patreon. I share them on YouTube anyways. Thank you so much for watching. This was not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. This is not financial advice. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon. Follow me on X. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.